to our commission meeting on this 5th day of August. And if everybody can please stand and repeat the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is presentation of Carbon County Employee of the Month, Rose Barnes.
Oh, now that's good.
Yeah.
Is that Leanne?
Yes. Well, I assume.
Leanne?
Can you hear us, Leanne? Hello, Leanne?
Yes.
Can you, until we get to your item, can you mute your camera? Or your phone?
Sorry. I'll do my best.
All right, thanks. Okay, sorry, Rose, go ahead.
That's okay. No, that's fine. So our commissioner, well, our employee of the month is Justin Needles, and I think we can all agree of how well deserving Justin is of employee of the month. He does so much for the county, you know, through emergency services, through the sheriff's office, you know, through the entire county. But he was nominated by Kay, and so I'm gonna let her say a few words, and then I'm sure you guys will follow suit as well.
So I nominated Justin because he's very resourceful and informative, not only with the virus, but everything that he's involved in, emergency services. He goes above and beyond. If he says he's going to do something, he goes and does it. When he wanted to bring the masks to us, I don't even know how he had time to go get them, and he was back with the masks, handing them out to all of us. He's very pleasant. He walks by and waves. He's always looks professional in his appearance and his, sorry, I'm not good at public speaking, his actions and his appearance, especially in his Jude's apparel.
Thanks for bringing that up. Appreciate that.
And I think he deserves to be recognized, not just for the county, but for everything he does for the whole county as a whole. And we really appreciate him.
Thanks.
You know, he said to me, he said, I am not deserving of this. And he said, there are more employees that deserve this more than I do. And I said, we have a lot of excellent employees here that are well deserving, and you are one of those. And he is, truly. So.
Well, thank you, Justin. We tend to agree with everything that was said. You've really stepped up, not just during COVID, but throughout your time at the county, and we appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I just feel like I come and do my job. There's, like I said, plenty of other people that should get this and not me, but thank you.
Well, and a prime example too is just like this Water Canyon fire. You kept all of us updated on what the status was, how that was moving, the teams that were up there, the COVID stuff again, the PPE, the coverage, the assistance throughout the county. It's been pretty amazing. So agree with everything that Kay said, and appreciate your humble acceptance of the award, but it is deserved.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You give us a level of comfort not worrying about that part of what goes on here, so thank you.
That's what I'm paid to do.
Okay, item number 2 on the agenda is approval of minutes. Commissioners, we have one set of minutes from the July 15th meeting.
I haven't seen anything to change or add.
I didn't see any changes. Just one question: if a decision was ever made on a vehicle.
So I've spoken with Commissioner Hopes about that. The vehicles weren't actually here. So we went with the lowest bid vehicle from Auto Farm at the $29,000 one and asked them to get it here so we can look at it and make sure that it meets our criteria.
Okay. Okay.
And that's the only thing, the only option we have right now. So we're just waiting for that vehicle to get here before we actually decide.
Okay, yeah. That was all I had. So I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes from the July 15th commission meeting.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda is open sealed bids for purchase of surplus real property on parcels 2A-1102-0000 and 2A-0841-0000 and 2A-0841-0001 and 2A-0850-0000. Seth?
Thomas is probably, or Kristen's probably going to mention that Christian asked us to suspend the sale of the last 3. So the only bid that we have today is there's one bid for that 2A-1102.
Okay.
The bids from Jerry Carlson on 2A-1102-0000 for $20,100.
What was that amount again, Seth? Sorry.
$20,100.
We had put in request for proposals, a minimum on that one of 40,000. So this is below that. We've only got the one bid. I suppose there's a couple of things we could do, accept that proposal, or this would put it in a position where we could negotiate a sale of it, try to get a little more.
Yeah, because that, it was 40 acres for that one parcel. So.
The appraised value of those parcels, I think, were about $500 an acre, which would put it there at about $20,000. But it appeared like maybe we could get a little more out of it. Maybe not.
Well, so it is what is appraised value. That's the 20,000, but we were asking for the 40.
I don't have it in front of me, but all of those seem like that. They were worth about $500 an acre for the raw ground. Do you remember, Seth?
I don't remember seeing appraisals for that property, but I know all the property in that area, or at least the surrounding property closest to that parcel, the assessor has them valued at approximately $500 an acre.
I think the appraised value from the assessor's office was under 17,000. So.
And this terrain is not smooth farming land, so to speak. It's kind of a hillside.
It's not farmland, but it's kind of in the cedars and sagebrush. It's really not farmable property. So
I would be okay if we entered into some negotiations and possibly did some checking to make sure that we're in the values, so that we're at least getting what the value of the property is per acre.
I'm good with that.
yeah, I would too. So
I'll make a motion that we accept the offer and we move into negotiations with Jerry Carlson.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 4, presentation by county seat, television program, and discussion of services available to the county. Welcome, Chad.
Commissioners, good to see you all. I took a survey immediately upon entering the door. I said, of all the officials If the more of them are wearing ties than not, I will put mine on. And I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, so I put my tie on. I hope that will be okay. I have something for you. I'm sorry, I don't have one. I will try to be brief with time because I'm sure you've got a big agenda and you want to get things done. I come here with 3 purposes. One of them, as always, my producer exhorts me whenever possible to come back with topics. So I will be asking you that in a little bit. I wanted to take a couple of minutes to tell you a little bit about the county seat and what we have, what has transpired this year and where we are going forward, and then talk about what we would like to see if we're going to go forward, and that becomes the question if. So, county seat is about midway through its 10th season. And it's kind of funny because none of you commissioners were actually here at the time we started this. But when we started the county seat, we had what we, I guess, easily be called a hostile administration, particularly towards energy, agriculture, and multiple use of public lands in Washington, D.C. And we had a press that ignored everything if it wasn't between Payson and Brigham City in the state. And we had a governor who was cozying up to the environmental groups and proposing things like wildlands designations. That was Governor Huntsman. And here we are. I was thinking about this at the time we were putting on the gubernatorial debate 10 years later. And we are about to go into the next year, and we very possibly could see the exact same thing that triggered us starting the county seat 10 years ago, because Huntsman was neck and neck with Spencer Cox. And I have heard from some of his campaign staff, they are still considering a write-in, which I think would be, well, I'll keep my opinion to myself. So I mused at that. But I do want to talk a little bit about the importance of this program and a little bit about how we have modified our messaging through the 10 years that we have done this, and then a little bit about going forward. So the county seat has tried to engage in its entire life at dealing with the issues that affect governance of particularly counties off the Wasatch Front. There is a lot of spillover to counties on the Wasatch Front. I mean, when you're talking about centrally assessed taxes, it's a bigger deal for Carbon County than centrally assessed taxes are for Salt Lake County as a proportion of what their budget is. You know, PILT is an issue that, believe it or not, Utah County and Weber County actually have PILT monies that come in. But they're like this, they're not like this. So we have tried to address the issues that affect counties, in particular rural counties, and we have tried to be responsive to the needs of the counties, regardless of the level at which they were able to participate. In the hiatus of Carbon County over the last few years, we have still been available if there were issues that need to be dealt with. And I think we made it clear that if you had reached out to us, we would have responded in a favorable position. But here's kind of where we are. County seat, you can look at all the glitzy numbers with the presentation that I sent you. I didn't want to take the time to try and go through it all here, but it's real simple. It's a Prezi. You click on the link and you just push the forward button and it will take you to each page and you can just read all of the stuff. The show is very successful in getting that 84 to 85 to 90,000 people that really make decisions and support communities across the state of Utah. Our records show that that's the audience based on what Nielsen provides us. I think our audience is actually bigger than that. And here's my reasoning behind it. One, we are on Invernal on VTV6. We are on KTTA 8.1. We are on Richfield Channel 10. We used to be on Carbon Emery, but they chose not to carry us some time ago. But we still are averaging over 30 broadcasts per week within the state of Utah. And the Nielsen ratings do not go past Utah County, and they do not go north of Weber County. Nor do the TV stations to cover news, because they want to cover news where their ratings books are. So I'm sorry to say, you guys are never going to see a Nielsen box at your house because they just don't bring them out here. So I suspect that as a percentage of audience, our show's a lot more popular off the Wasatch Front, but we still have a pretty decent rating for a locally produced news show. That being said, the last couple of years, this show has not made its own way. And as I have said from the very beginning when I first talked to Carbon County, when you were back over there in the old building, that this was a very important project. And once it came to my attention how desperately local government needed to have their voice heard, I became a big champion, and I didn't really fully realize it until we started on the project. And then it became clear to me that because of my belief that small government is the most important government and that people seem to know the least about it, including those in the state legislature, unless of course they've served as a county commissioner, that we needed to be able to take these issues and discuss them. And I was very passionate about it because I believed then and I believe now that someday when the markers come due, that the federal government, through its massive deficit spending, someday the checks are going to stop. Someday the services like the parks a couple of years ago are going to get closed down. And it will be local government that keeps our society together. And so that's why I think these issues are really important to discuss. But we've been running at a deficit. We went from a high of 24 counties, and we're down to, I believe, 16 at this point. So I'm going to ask a favor. We have been involved in a project that has provided our company a fair amount of profit. It is a 3-year contract. We are in the 2nd year of it. Last year, I put almost all of the money we made off of that contract into covering the county seat to keep it on the air. By its own sponsorship, it will run out of gas somewhere between the 2nd week of September and the 1st week of October. Before I take the 2nd year of that contract that I have and apply those monies to county seat, I really need to plead with the counties to make a decision about whether they want to proceed with this program. And so I'm making these appearances across the board to the counties, and I basically tell you that we are producing this show for about $13,000 a copy. If you add that up, it comes up to more than I'm asking for, but I believe that I am willing to take the gamble that the $100,000 or $70,000 or $100,000 we fall short on, we can make up with people like Jones and DeMille. And by the way, if ever you guys are talking to Jones and DeMille, whether you use them for engineering or not, I beg you, thank them for their support of the county seat. They have contributed $26,000 to help us get our message out, and all they're looking for is a little bit of recognition that they're stepping up to the plate, and that can help us get others. So make it worth the time for Jones and DeMille. They've got an office here. Just say, hey, we notice. And whether you use them or not, well, that's a whole different deal, but at least acknowledge it, and I ask you to do that. So it really comes down to the fact that we need to raise that amount of money. I have information on what that will take to cover most of the expense, at least close enough that I can feel it's a reasonable gamble to go forward. And it is in that proposal. What we are going to do to provide a little added value is right now we are working at assembling an app that we can use internally by the end of the year that will help connect local communities with whatever circle of database they want for social media and press releases. And smaller counties have a very difficult time with the PIO function. They don't really have a budget for it, but you need it. You guys are seasoned and experienced in running county government, handling legal affairs for the county, keeping track of records for the county, keeping track of budgets. When it comes to getting messages out, it's very easy for us to write stuff. We're writers by nature. If we can communicate that in a very short period of time, literally in a matter of minutes, for any counties that are participating in this program, we will be able to ascertain a message, write it, get your approval, and distribute it in channels for you, both social media and the regular press channels through press releases. And by organizing the data and having an automated mechanism by which we can put that out, I think we can do a fairly effective job of helping you cover whatever kind of situation comes up. I urge you, whether we continue with the county seat or not, to be proactive about problems that come up with counties. We've seen it time and time again. Most recently this year, Beaver County ran into a problem because they were trying to create and build and fund an event center. And there are kind of 3 communities in Beaver County, and they're all about 30 miles apart from each other. And they got into kind of a mishmash over where this events facility should be. The commissioners thought it would be best to centralize it and put it in Minersville at a lake that they already have the shoreline properties on in a former state park, and develop it. There were some very rational arguments, but by the time the 2 other communities got done with it, it became so unpopular, it unseated an incumbent commissioner who was trying to run for re-election. And what a great loss, because the guy that's coming in is a doctor and he has 0 experience in government. And I think that outcome could have been different if they would have been proactive about the message. And they could have used, our resources, the very loud microphone that we have, or megaphone that we have with county seat. And so I encourage all of your agencies to get out in front of issues instead of wait to react to them. Your adversaries in the environmental community have figured this out years ago, and they're very good at framing debates. And I'm hoping that we need to learn how to frame those debates and start the conversation first. So that's what I'm asking for. My last ask is that if you are going to support the show for 2021, that you make a commitment to it relatively early so that I don't reach into my pocket and put out $150,000+ to keep the show on the air till we can get to 2021, only to find out by March that only 13 counties are going to support it. So I'm asking all the counties to make that commitment and try and make their decision to see if they support it. I think it's vital, and I think sometimes people mistake this as being a platform for re-election, and it is not. And I want to tell those of you who are here that it is not. This is the only singular opportunity where you can take an issue that's important and relevant, and as Senator Thatcher says, too complex to be explained on a bumper sticker, and have the kind of conversation that it needs, 28 minutes if necessary, to successfully have enough of a discussion that you can put points out there that will sway people's minds, the people who are interested in it. Now, is everybody going to watch it? No. There are probably people in this room that don't watch it, but every one of you should. Because if you need to understand county government, we have a 10-year history of what has transpired in county government. It's all on YouTube. And if you ever need to brush up on county government and historical issues, this is the place to do it, because we have revisited centrally assessed taxes, jail funding, wild horses, energy issues, not once, but multiple times, and each time it gives you a snapshot of whether we're making any progress on these. It's a great barometer to see how things are going. So with that, you've been silent. I'm used to not having commissioners be silent, and I am asking for you to tell us what we need to be talking about for the balance of this year, and ask if you will please, if it's possible for you to consider making that commitment if you're going to support it early, and let us know. And that's what I came to talk about. We don't want to give up on county seat, but we may have to. I don't want to take a golden egg and throw it all away. So, questions, comments?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate what you do. It's a valuable thing. I have not paid attention over the years to it until recently, but yeah, it's really helpful. There's no question. So thank you.
I've used it as a tool with constituents on certain different topics, like centrally assessed properties, to help explain how it works, and it's a fabulous tool. It's great.
Yeah, and you see each community has its own unique needs. There's a lot of things like centrally assessed that tie us all together. Being fairly new to all this too, it's good to have history you can go back and look at, learn from. So again, I'm kind of like Larry as well. I appreciate it. And, I've seen a few of the broadcasts.
Well, there are 52 a year. There are 10 years of them. That's 520 broadcasts. Every single one of them is on YouTube. So if you've missed any, you can have a binge watch and find a very educational way to spend your time. I would also ask if you guys have any connection with your school districts. This is a resource that's in public domain, and if they're looking at civics and they really want to understand how civics work and they apply to the local community, these are great episodes for teachers to tap into and get a first-hand, on-the-ground conversation, an educational story, and a discussion about how things work. And with that, that's why I drove all the way down here from Rich County. By the way, the Rich County Commission extends their greetings to you. One of them with a snide remark, which would have come from Bill Cox, but
And expected.
the two Westons, because there's always two Westons on the Rich County Commission, they just hand it around the family. They both were giving hearty thanks and greetings to you as I was on my way down here. Got any topics for me before I leave? Derek will scold me if I don't come back. And I do want to just, on the record, talk about something that I've learned. Derek is an asset. He was my first producer. He was there the first 5 years of this show. He left and he's come back. He's been back for 2 years. I don't think anyone appreciated, and certainly not me, how rare a commodity he is in today's world of journalism for somebody who can write, produce, and engage in long-form journalism. There are very few people in that subset. Take somebody who understands rural thinking, and it becomes even smaller. And if you take that with the unique nature of Utah, and it becomes even smaller. And I learned that the hard way, because when he said he wanted to leave and find a bigger ceiling, because he was afraid we couldn't expand the show well enough for him to have a career, which we convinced him to come back, very fortunate, I thought, well, we can find somebody else. If there's one Derek, there's another. Well, I'm telling you, there aren't many like him. And he's a godsend to rural Utah, and I'd hate to turn him loose and send him somewhere else. So we're really hoping that you guys, and I know you've been on hiatus, we hope you can come back and support us like you used to going forward next year. We have a lot of ground to cover, and we may have an uphill battle to climb. We certainly are going to have it with reapportionment. Right now, estimates are that you're going to lose 4 rural legislators in the reapportionment, and they're all going to go to the Wasatch Front. And I might add, the only way we're going to fix this problem is to challenge the court decision that took the Utah State Senate from being 1 senator per county and turned it into a population-based. I think that decision was wrong, and nobody ever challenged it. You are not going to get the legislature to challenge it. It will have to come from the counties and from the citizens to try and put an initiative together. But if you're ever going to balance the playing field in rural Utah and the support they get from the legislature, the only path to that, in my opinion, is through the Senate. And to remedy the problem, I think that if you look at it in national precedents with U.S. senators, there's an argument for it, and I think that it was badly decided, and not like there are any federal judges that make bad decisions in Utah. Judge Shelby. You know, I think it needs to be challenged. Thank you very much. I'm sure I've taken more time. Are there any questions? Do you guys have any questions? Do you have any topics?
You recently did one of your episodes on elections, specifically mail-in voting, didn't you?
Yeah.
I believe you did. I think it was a very good. It's been a little while since I saw it, but that's a good thing for everyone in our county to know, and to know that it's on YouTube and they go watch it. That's a great thing for them to get a little more informed about.
Grab it, download it if you want. That's how all of our information is. Reshare it on Facebook. It's probably better for circulation if you actually get an app or a program like Yummy and actually physically download the video, which you have our permission to do, and then put it back up through your own social media channels as a Facebook, because it will go further. They tend to favor Facebook videos, and they tend to try to restrict shared YouTube videos. It's a rivalry thing with Facebook and the like. So you have our permission to do that. It's simple to do. There are several apps like that. I use that one just because it is so simple, and just download it and share it. You're welcome to anything we've done over the last 10 years. Use it to your advantage. That's why we're here, and we hope you'll support us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Again, I'm used to you guys being a little more talkative. So you've done well.
Item number 10, consideration and possible approval of resolution number 2020-09, authorizing filing cross appeals of centrally assessed property taxes for Pacific Corp Incorporated, Union Pacific, AT&T, and others.
Basically, what Christian let me know is going on with, I'm aware Christian prepared a document that he's already submitted to y'all. From my understanding, basically, this is just, it's not like we plan on actually filing any cross appeals or anything, but apparently with these companies and potentially others that have filed appeals to their, basically their taxes, or centrally assessed taxes, this will just give us, or give our attorney, our contracted tax attorney, the ability to file cross appeals in regards to these cases if it's in our best interest. And so that's basically the reason why that we've, Christian's prepared this for today.
Okay. Questions, commissioners?
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either. I have my opinions on this, but I'll voice those at another time.
I'll make the motion that we approve resolution number 2020-09, authorizing the cross appeals of centrally assessed property taxes by that attorney.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 6, amendments to the county procurement policy provisions. Are you covering that one as well?
Yeah, pretty much. The amendments, basically what our county procurement policy was, like, or has been anyway for a while now, Well, it kind of looks like it was created, but without really giving thought about long-term what could be the consequence of how it was written. Basically, under the county procurement code right now, basically, if the county was to make a deal with anybody that had a job in county government in regards to services like paper, like getting paper or other types of things. Basically, if you had any negotiations or business with any of those organizations, it would be a conflict of interest, and conflicts of interest were completely disallowed. Like even just like putting that information, like disclosing, for example. Usually in the state code, if you disclose this kind of stuff, it can be all right and you can proceed. But under our code, you couldn't. If there's a conflict, if you have a brother or sister who works, for example, at a nearby store or business that the county was getting services from, the county just couldn't do any business with that place. So it's been rewritten to allow for, basically to get around that, so that as long as it's disclosed in public meetings like here, and it's all, everything's out there, it can happen. So that's pretty much, probably not very eloquently said on my part, but.
So would those disclosures need to be from every county employee? So say somebody that worked in any of the departments, if their sibling or a relative of theirs was doing business with the county, would they need to come to the meeting to disclose that? Or is it just elected officials? Because as elected officials, we've always been held to that standard. But does this also include supervisors and everybody under them?
From what I remember, I haven't read the document recently, but the way we redrafted it, I would say for the most part, if you're an employee of the county and you have like this business connection, then that should be disclosed, I would say. I think it might be, if it's like over $1,000, then I think then disclosure is necessary. That's kind of the general idea of it.
In the document, it says that any officer, agent, employee, or representative, or member of any council, board, committee, or commission of the county is included in this document. So
we should probably, if approved, we should maybe send out some training or some, at least at very minimum, a memo that lets all of the county employees know that they need to, if they have a relative doing business with the county, they need to disclose that if there is business happening.
Would that be something out of the clerk's office or HR, or possibly both?
yeah, it would include both of us, but I think it's more of an HR thing. So.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
No questions.
Okay.
I'll make the motion that we approve this amendment to section 2-5 of the ordinance number 455, clearing up the procurement policy.
And I will second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Item number 7, consideration of possible approval of a letter to the Division of Wildlife Resources in opposition to the buffalo hunt on the Tavaputs, and also request for further and more aggressive actions taken to control and remove buffalo in a unit that is being managed for 40 buffalo. We have some representatives from DWR here, and just to help kind of frame this conversation, the tribe, the Ute tribe, on the other side of Desolation Canyon has a buffalo herd that they manage. There's also a state herd of buffalo on the other side of the river as well that's being managed. The population count mainly on the tribe of the buffalo has increased so much that the buffalo are crossing Desolation Canyon. Up until recently, it's mainly been during the winter, and they stay in the low country, feeding in Range Creek and along Desolation Canyon. But as of recently, last year and this year, they've crossed Desolation, and some of the buffalo are now not returning back to the other side, and they're staying on this side. Some of the ranchers have expressed some concern over the buffalo coming onto the Carbon County side because of brucellosis. There hasn't been a positive brucellosis from buffalo to cattle for 20 years or something like that, but we don't have any, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have any of the records from the tribe verifying that they've done their brucellosis testing. We don't have any reason to doubt that they've done it, but they just haven't shared those records with us. The other conflict that arises from the buffalo is range management and feed. It's another competition for the buffalo present another mouth to feed on the range that's already being managed for a certain number of elk and deer and also cattle. There was a group of interested parties, which included DNR, Utah State, with their ownership in Range Creek, both Carbon and Emery counties, private landowners, sportsmen's groups, and we've been working on a buffalo management or strategic plan. I've given the commissioners a copy of the strategic plan that was approved by that group, and part of the one of the actions that was requested was that there would be a buffalo hunt created to help provide pressure to keep the animals on the other side of Desolation Canyon. This agenda item comes about because one of the landowners has requested that and has expressed some frustrations with the amount of buffalo that have been on the Tavaputs this year, and also that there is a hunt and some of the buffalo might not be able to be reached because it's all private land. So there's a lot of complicated issues surrounding this whole topic, and we've had some conversations, and we invited the DNR to come here because we want to use this not as a stick to beat the DNR with, but more as an opportunity to find out what the impediments are to being on their side as well as county and all sides to be able to get better management and better control over the buffalo. I had a meeting with Chris and Brad Crompton, and we discussed a few things like in this letter, if we approve a letter, should be trying to ask for greater access for hunters into Range Creek, which I think is a good, and that came from the DNR. If there's better access, maybe even overnight access into Range Creek, the hunters would have a greater opportunity to harvest a buffalo and put pressure. As it currently sits in Range Creek, it's day use only. You hike in and you have to be out before dark, and that includes carrying out the animal because there's no vehicle access. Does that help frame kind of you have any questions on how it's framed so far?
No, I read the document too, which was very helpful, so I think what might be helpful is just to have Chris come up and kind of explain the struggles that you guys have on your side, and that would help me for sure understand what you can and can't do. And
yeah, good afternoon. My name is Chris Wood. I'm the Regional Supervisor for the Division of Wildlife Resources. Brad Crompton's here with me as well, so I invite him to speak as I fumble through any answers. Yeah, I think you said it very well, Commissioner Hopes. We've met together for a year or two now to try to develop some strategies that each one of our agencies or organizations can do to help alleviate this issue. We want zero bison on this side of the river, but that's not happening now because the tribal bison population is too big and they're moving over, as Commissioner said. So we've tried to develop from our this committee that Commissioner mentioned, develop strategies for all of our agencies to maybe take back and try to implement. One of those strategies that we came up with as a group was to have this over-the-counter hunt, a once-in-a-lifetime bison over-the-counter hunt, which we've never ever done as an agency before. So we implemented that. It's going on now. It started August 1st. In Utah, you can hunt big game from August 1st to January 31st. And so to make it as liberal as possible and the opportunity is as great as possible, we made that hunt from August 1st to January 31st. The strategy that we came up with as a group called for division removal in the months from April 15th till July 31st. And so in June and July, as groups of bison came on the Tavaputs, we put a lot of effort into going up there as an agency, bringing wildlife services in with helicopters, and trying to remove bison when we could. Some days we'd get a report of them and we couldn't find them. Some days we found them and we removed 9 of them, I think, in one day. So I think we removed a total of 11 as an agency in June and July. We donated the meat to the public, and then the hunt started on Saturday. And I haven't gotten an update, but as of Saturday, I think we had 6 bison removed by the public. 5 of them were on private land, and then 1 of them was on a public land, from my understanding. So this hunt that was created and what we're doing is not the cure-all. We don't have the silver bullet on our end. The silver bullet lies on the tribal land and their ability to manage that population and get it to a lower number. What I do think this does is it sends a message to the tribe that as their bison come over to off their reservation, we have to manage it. We have to manage those bison responsibly, and I think it sends a message, and it has sent a message this summer that we will remove bison, and I think it gets them to act on their end to increase permits and reduce the population on their end. And they've expressed the interest in doing that. They want to do that, but it's just been a struggle for them to do that for the last several years.
Who's involved in your committee?
We had the Division of Wildlife. We had the commissioner from Carbon and Emery County. We had Dr. Mike King from the university here. We had the University of Utah, Range Creek Museum folks. We had the Department of Ag. We had SITLA and BLM and sportsman groups. I might have left somebody off, but it was a pretty big committee.
Okay, thank you.
And so with these over-the-counter hunts that are going on now until January, end of January, is there an expected number that you'd like to have, or is it just an overall reduction and any amount would be?
Yeah, I'll maybe update. So far, we've sold 80 over-the-counter permits for this upcoming year. There might be more as the season goes on. It's a tough hunt. Access is the hardest part. You get access to these bison by floating down the river several days through Desolation Canyon, or through going into Range Creek and using the University Museum's access and their permit program. The museum, I think, closes December 1st. So after December 1st, it gets even a little more tricky. And of course, the bison hunters are competing for permits with deer and elk hunters as well. So there's a few things that there's a lot of things to figure out and try to, increase opportunity with. The private landowners up on top of the Tavaputs do have the opportunity to bring in hunters on their lands and charge access or trespass fees. And it could be a big moneymaker for them if they're interested. And that's what we're hoping they are interested, but I've heard mixed feelings. I've heard one landowner is very interested and one landowner isn't interested at all. So, but they do have the ability to open up and guide people to those bison if they occur on their land and make a lot of money off that opportunity. So,
And is this the first year of this hunt?
This is the first year, yep. In the past, we've, as bison have appeared, we've gotten people off of an alternate list, I guess, and given up people the opportunity, but it's been very small. I will say that I don't know how many people will harvest bison. I don't think we expect the bison removal from this effort to really do much at a population level. I think the greatest good this hunt will do is send a message to the tribe that we're removing bison, and I think that alone will get them to act. And the acting on the tribe's part will be the biggest impact on the population. So.
And the negative side of this, if there was no hunt, what would be the outcome if more and more bison started showing up on this side of the river?
There's concern about forage being taken from both public allotments, from the BLM, and from private lands. From our perspective, we don't have a disease concern. We've been told by the state vet who works for the Department of Ag that the brucellosis issue is it's not on the radar at all, is what the exact quote they've said. So, but we understand that this isn't a unit that we want bison in. This isn't an area that we plan to have bison, and so the population objective is 0, and so we want to help maintain that 0 population objective.
How many property owners own property where this problem exists?
There's 2 main landowners up on the Tavaputs. There's a few other ones here and there, but and down in Range Creek, I believe as well. I think there's 2 main ranches up on the Tavaputs that I've heard from.
And then there is some public ground where the buffalo are as well.
Yeah, but those public lands are hard to get to. I mean, it's the bottom of Desolation Canyon along the river bottom there. It's Range Creek, which is, secured by the University of Utah Museum and it requires a permit. There's some BLM land, but there's wilderness issues and struggles too there. But I believe that Emory County is also working with BLM to try to understand what the access opportunities are, what the camping opportunities are. We've worked with Emory County to increase the access on Turtle Canyon and to allow trucks and small horse trailers to access Turtle Canyon, which is another access point to Range Creek. But it's tough. The other thing that happens, sometimes mid-October, sometimes December, is once the snow flies, you can't drive over Horse Canyon. And then a week or 2 later, Turtle Canyon becomes closed because of weather. So, and at that point, you're running the river to get a bison usually. So,
and I guess just to help people that might be listening to this, I don't know that our viewership is as good as the county seat, but
I think this is a great topic.
but well, I'm just saying our viewership isn't as good as the county seat.
Okay.
But this potentially creates another issue, as we've heard word that people are buying or renting rafts, and whether they're experienced or not floating the river, that are planning to go down in the river. People just need to be aware that one side of the river is tribal, and you're not to go on that property, and the Carbon County side of it, just be careful, especially we've in our conversation the other day, you had mentioned that most of the permits from, was it September and all the way through October were mostly taken, and some of them in December were already taken.
Yeah, that's
the
what
river permits. So there's becoming very limited access even on the river side of this for people to be able to go in and hunt. So don't go buy a permit thinking you're going to float the river until you have a river permit to get in the river.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that we do, before you buy one of these over-the-counter bison permits, we do have you take it's a mandatory course before you can actually buy it. It's, a 15-minute course online where you go through a presentation, and we basically, in that presentation, do the best that we can to tell you about all the hurdles you might hit and all the access issues and the difficulty of the hunt and, the equipment you might need, rafts and horses, and, explain that this is not for the casual hunter. This is for serious, hardcore backcountry hunters.
This is very rugged country.
Correct.
It's remote and it's very limited for rescue opportunities as well. So keep that in mind.
And that's the concern that, as I've talked with Sheriff Wood and Sheriff Funk about this, there is a concern that if somebody becomes stranded in the canyon, it's a helicopter ride out, or depending on the time of year, Emery County has a river boat, but if it's in December, they're not going to risk running that boat up through the ice. It's going to be a helicopter ride. So
I think even in extremely low water, they're going to be very cautious with their boat as well. And weather's a factor for that helicopter to fly, and that's really, from our end, that's the closest, quickest, safest way to get there. But if they can't get there, you're going to wait until they can, because we can't get to you.
right.
In theory, in the past, there's been elk hunters who run the rivers. I'm not sure what the numbers are on that, but this will definitely increase traffic on the river for hunters. So,
Yeah.
valid concern.
And I guess the other reason for potentially looking at this letter would be, we have a management plan or what we're projecting to do, but if this stops working and the numbers continue to increase past what they've gone this year, when do we start looking at other actions? And I guess that's part of the conversation that I would like to have, because we've had upwards of a couple hundred buffalo in Range Creek and along Desolation Canyon at times. I don't want to misstate that. Is that about right, Brad? The tribe comes in and uses a helicopter to haze them back to the tribe. But at some point, if we have larger numbers or herds of buffalo that don't go across, are there greater measures that we can look at and start taking?
I'm not.
And I know we don't have an answer here. That you guys have to get approvals through the state. Some of this might even take legislation to fix.
Yeah, at this point, I think from our ability, we're being as aggressive as we can and as liberal as we can with our permits and our dates. There are sideboards that we have to work within. It would take legislative action or our director stating otherwise for those sideboards to change. So, and if you want to write a letter to ask for those, that's your opportunity, and we respect that.
Okay.
I will say, I think this committee's met like every few months for a year or two. The plan is finalized. Makita Hansen here is the facilitator
She
of
did
that.
a great job.
That group. I think we're committed to meeting once a year, and is it once a year or twice a year? Okay, for at least once a year, and we can increase that if we need to, but talk about, what each agency and organization is doing and what's working, what's not, and I think we'd be open to other strategies as they come up and other opportunities as they come up in that group.
I'm interested to see how effective this is. If it applies enough pressure that the buffalo herds don't continue to grow, but if they do, that's the what if.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it might take a few years of this, the tribe seeing that we're serious about this, for them to put the number of tags that they need to on their side of the river, because
Right.
their population is big.
or do we start herding them up and selling them to other tribes outside of this region? That we're going to have to get creative with our thinking.
Yeah.
If this doesn't work.
I mentioned Range Creek and access a lot. today, but I guess I want to point out that it's a complex issue. The University of Utah manages Range Creek, and they have a great relationship with the Ute tribe, and so the Ute tribe doesn't love our hunt, of course, right? And so there's some complexities there, I guess, too, that we need to understand. And but yeah, we can work with them, and they told us no, this spring. They said no, we can't allow any more access, but. If the commissioners want to keep asking and the counties want to keep asking, I think that's fair.
Okay.
Is the university against the buffalo being on their property?
They're kind of indifferent. They're not really worried about them. They kind of like them as a natural native species that was once there. I don't think they want several hundred of them, but in the past, and when the several hundred come in, the university personnel are gone for the season. So that's how it's been historically. So, but they have witnessed a dozen or 2 dozen come in, and they don't seem to mind.
They've usually had, from what we talked about the other day, a couple bulls that just kind of stay there year-round.
Yeah.
Kind of part of the scenery, I guess.
Yep. I should say, too, the hunter who does hunt and hikes in or gets their horses and goes in 7-10 miles should have a plan on how to, successfully harvest that animal and make sure the meat doesn't get wasted. And we had a hunter this weekend who is an expert level hunter, and they were able to, by taking 2 days and putting half the meat in the river, Range Creek, and hauling it out on horses, were able to successfully harvest an animal on the public land without wasting any meat. But this person's an expert level hunter, so that should be understood.
Okay.
Chris, I just want to thank you guys. You're in a tough spot, and we certainly don't want to drive wedges as a county between you and landowners and anybody else. We're kind of sitting in the middle here. Just we need to be helpful and not cause problems. So help us understand where we can help.
Thank you, and we appreciate Commissioner Hopes' participation on this committee. It was, a lot of long nights midweek where he'd probably rather be home with his family, so thank you for that.
And it's an economic impact on both sides of this. Hunting has a huge impact economically throughout the state, but so does ranching and farming. And I think if we can work together, I think they have more in common than they have separating them in most situations. But there are these conflicts that arise that we need to try and help deal with. So thank you.
Yeah, appreciate the information, the knowledge, answer the questions. I don't think there's a simple, easy answer that'll make everybody happy, but we'll do what we can to help support you guys.
Is there any appetite for possibly drafting up a letter?
Is, at this point, is a letter of support, who would that go to, or who would it
that's the crux of the letter is it would probably need to go to DNR to see if there are things that they need our support on, or we can ask for further or lifted regulations to help control the buffalo. The other one might be a letter to the university to see if we can get greater access for hunters during the hunting season, and also control over it. One of the things that we have identified is hunters will block out the entire hunt. Now, it's hard to block out the full buffalo hunt because it ranges every hunt, but say an elk hunter would go in and block out that week and a half of hunt for him and his family and everybody, so he can go in there and hunt. And that creates a problem for everyone else that wants to go in there and either view the archaeology or to hunt during those times. So if there were greater control over how many permits a person could control, that might be helpful as well. So maybe a letter to the university would be a helpful, asking them to to help us with this.
For their cooperation,
Mhm.
part of this. Yeah, I think the end goal is basically to reduce the number of bison in this area. I know certain people would love to shoot bison all day long, but I'm not opposed to any kind of letter. Just, I guess from my vantage point, it's more of an informational, who's the best partner with this to start the conversation. I don't really want to come across as we're dictating how
Right.
this should be, because we want to leave it to the professionals and the folks that deal with it all the time. So if we want to draft a letter to the university as a support letter, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the only angle I can see here that maybe advantageous would be to them. It might help open up some opportunity to reduce the numbers through that ground that's pretty tough to get into.
Okay. Okay. We probably ought to have a motion on that, Christian? Okay.
I'll make the motion that we draft a letter to the university in regards to the Range Creek property, asking them to relook at the permit process, limiting the numbers or the amount of reservations that can be made by single individuals, try to spread that out, as well as possibly looking a little differently at access in there, so that this can work a little better on both sides.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Appreciate your time. Item number 8, consideration of possible approval of an interlocal cooperation and subrecipient grant agreement with Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, Area Agency on Aging, and Carbon County, effective July 1st, 2020, and terminates on June 30th, 2021. Christian, do you?
I'll let Tristan cover this one.
Okay.
I think it's pretty similar to what we do every year, but
Yeah.
I haven't looked at the details, so.
That's pretty much what it looks like it is.
This is pretty much for our senior programs that provide the meals on wheels, and the programming for socialization that happens out at the senior center. Just for information, the county for the nutrition side of this puts in $530,121, and on the socialization side, the programming, we put in $249,395 for a total of $779,516. That's the county's portion, of which from the federal government, the state, and everyone else, their portion is around $338,541. So the majority of the senior services are funded through county dollars.
Which is a significant amount of money.
It's a hefty amount, for sure. And it's a great program.
So I have
No questions.
questions or anything, so. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we approve the interlocal cooperation and subrecipient contract agreement with the Southeastern Utah Association of Local Governments, Area Agency on Aging, and Carbon County, effective July 1st, 2020, and terminates on June 30th, 2021.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Item number 9, consideration of possible approval of modification to the agreement with public defenders and adjustments of budget amounts for public defenders. Christian.
And Commissioners, this one I have to look at in context with number 10 also.
Do you want me to read that one in?
Yeah, let's take them both at the same time if we can.
Item number 10 is consideration of possible approval of a grant award from the Indigent Defense Council for supplemental funding for public defender services for fiscal year 2021.
Okay, and Commissioners, did Jeannie give you a paper that I
about 4:28 p.m.
I emailed something, but I think I probably sent it too late to get it into your packets. But this is just a summary of the dollars we're talking about. And then you can also look at this. This is just a grant. So the grant award contemplates that we're going to pay $285,000 because that was what was budgeted by the county in 2019. But here's our deal. A few months ago, we approved a contract to pay the Public Defender Consortium. And that contract came out to $31,866 a month, or $382,400 a year. And that was contemplating that the Indigent Defense Commission would be contributing $108,600 to that. So if they had come through and paid that $108,600, then we would be up to the amount we agreed to, the $382,400. But which would mean then the county would pay $273,800. So we thought at the beginning of the year that what we were going to have to pay was $273,800 for the Public Defender Service. That's what would come out of the county's pockets, and the IDC would pay $108,000. IDC had their funding cut by the legislature, and they said, no, we can only pay $86,880, and that's on that sheet I just handed you, Commissioner Jensen. So instead of 108, we're getting 86. So what that would mean if the county were to make up the deficit to keep the public defenders whole at the $382,400 mark, it would mean you'd have to pay $295,520 instead of the $273,800 that you were looking at. Now, I don't quite know where we got. I think we anticipated, though, all along we were going to have to pay. In years past, we've budgeted $285,000, and the IDC called me and said, you can't go below the $285 anyway, because you promised when we first started to fund you that you would keep your funding level at that $285 amount. So somehow, but I don't think we ended up actually paying that full amount, even though that's what we had budgeted. So they're expecting us to budget $285. And so really, if you do that, if you look at the $285 in context with the deficit, that really is more like a $10,000 deficit. And I'll let Seth, you probably ought to look at this. You're in the dark while I'm talking, so just about that. So I guess the question is, Commissioners, we have a provision in our contract that says if the IDC does not fully fund it at the $108,600, the attorneys agree to go back to the drawing board on this and look and see what we can do. But I think we really are obligated to do at least the $285,000. IDC is going to expect that. And so really it's a matter more of about $11,000 that we're short for the attorneys. So the decision comes to you, and along with that, then we have to approve the grant, and the grant contemplates we're going to do $285, but the grant isn't taking into account our contract, because our contract is saying we're going to pay these guys this full amount, right? But the grant says, well, all we care about is that you commit to the $285, and we'll pay the $86. So if we sign the grant award as it is, we're short, or the attorneys are short. And so we could do that and say, yeah, we'll agree to that $285, and then an IDC, you pay the $86, but then we still have a problem because the attorneys aren't receiving the amount that they contemplated they were going to receive. So you need to make a decision as to how you want to proceed. Whether you want to bring the attorneys in to negotiate this, or whether you simply want to see if you can make up that amount this year. I would suggest what we would do is, if you do exceed that $285,000, that we put an addendum to our acceptance of the grant award indicating that this amount, we're paying this extra amount just this year, just this once, and we're not agreeing that we're going to budget it at this amount in the future, but we will do it this year to cover the contract amount. If you decide to do that, you may say, well, we got to bring the attorneys back in and talk about this. But what I don't want is for the IDC to say, well, next year we'll fund the grant fully, but now you guys are stuck at this higher rate than you were before. I think we ought to say, no, we're doing this to satisfy our contract, not because we're bound by you to do it.
Christian, I have a question for you. With COVID and the reduction in the amount of traffic you're seeing through the court system and possibly prosecution cases, is their workload reduced as well?
It has since picked up again. It was slow before, but things, I would say, are not slow now. And stuff that was getting delayed through back from March through, I just finished, for example, we had 95 cases on our preliminary hearing and order to show cause calendar, where we typically have 50. So now the backlog's catching up. So the workload was reduced for probably 3 months, and now it seems like things are just about as active as before. Sheriff could comment on that if he wants, but I think what I'm seeing is the officers are busier than they were in March. I don't know if they're as busy as they were, say, a year ago, but I think they are. But
And I actually think it's going to pick up. I think you're going to see a boomerang effect, and I think the courts are going to get super busy because they did push some stuff off, and it's all got to keep up. I think they're going to get busier than they want to be.
I'll give you an example. Today, several defendants came to court and said, well, I haven't been able to get into Mr. Oliver. In fact, his office said that they couldn't even get me in before today's court date. And I called I called a week ago, and he said all the appointments that he had available to talk to him are filled up. So right now, the public defenders are really slammed with stuff, and we are too. So it has picked up again. I think that window where things are slowing down is gone. Unless another COVID wave hits, I think we're going to crank back up to normal here.
And the reason I asked that question is just wondering if it's been slow. Is it reasonable to bring the attorneys back in and ask them to reduce their amount by the amount we're short? It's not much, but
well, and that's your call. I don't think it's appropriate. The thing that I get from the IDC is, Christian, we don't want the county attorney's office negotiating this thing. It needs to be the commissioners and the public defenders. So I really think it's your call. Casey got a letter today saying that this grant award needs to be accepted by August 31st. So my thought would be, if you did want to talk to them, you maybe ought to ask them to come to either set a special meeting or ask them to come visit with you at the next commission meeting, if you wanted to negotiate this some more.
Is there any possibility of using COVID funds?
Well,
because the county's received some, and we can't supplement it for our revenue, but
I think it's worth looking at, for sure, because that's the reason why this money is gone, is because the state is anticipating fewer revenues.
Right.
I don't think there's any way that, just opinion, I don't think there's any way that we'll be able to use COVID funds, because the restriction on COVID funds is that we cannot use them for something that's already been budgeted for, and where the full amount of the contract for the public defenders was already budgeted for, it won't fall within what those funds are meant to cover.
Okay.
There you go.
So as part of this too, obviously a contract was negotiated with these defenders, with these attorneys. And we had it set at a certain amount. The additional money for IDC was lower than anticipated. Moving forward, could that be part of the language in the new contract and agreement? I mean, this is an unforeseen thing. Nobody knew it was going to happen, obviously.
Well, that is in the agreement. So right now, the agreement, we have not signed it and sent it off to you approved it, but it hasn't been formalized and sent to the attorneys to sign because we were waiting to see what the IDC did. But it does say, the parties agree that in the event grant funding in this amount, meaning the $108,600, is not secured by July 1st, 2020, or is revoked or reduced prior to the expiration of this agreement, the parties will renegotiate the amount to be paid by Carbon County under this contract. And this contract, yeah, I believe, is in place for, let's see, I think it's a couple of years, at least 2 and maybe 3 years. Is that your question?
Yeah,
Tony?
It is. So I guess we're free to say basically this is the situation. Do you accept this new number, lower number, or I mean, what if they say no? If we can go into negotiations, we can say this is what it is, take it or leave it.
That's right.
And they could take it or leave it.
Sure.
If they take it, we move on, and we wait until next year to see what that budget funding looks like. What is the result if they don't accept?
Well, then the courts are still going to appoint public defenders. So then you risk them billing you by the hour for it as opposed to a contract rate. The courts will probably still appoint these same guys on cases. We can ask the court to expand the pool of who receives public defender funds. So there's other attorneys other than these 3 that would be willing to do some work. There's not a lot more other than these 3. These guys are the main ones who are attorneys in town right now.
Sure.
So you kind of come to a stalemate where they say, no, we'll just bill you, and then you risk your bill being higher because the way the courts have interpreted the 6th Amendment is that you shall provide a public defender to an indigent person. And you don't really, you're going to pay for that guy. And they're going to appoint him, and you can't stop the appointment. And then you're going to get a bill, and a court's going to make you pay a bill. And then you have to fight individual bills and say, no, this bill wasn't reasonable, and this one wasn't. So.
And in my mind, it's the county's money, and they would be saying that to the county, not so much the commissioners. This is a situation that's just been thrust upon us, and it's not much lower than what was originally agreed to. I think in good faith, it would be good to possibly negotiate and see if they'll accept the number that came from the IDC on top of the 285.
Okay.
My opinion.
I agree.
Do we have a motion in that?
I think we ought to invite them in and revisit that and see if there's a way to reduce that by the amount reduced by the IDC. And that would need to be done in a commission meeting, I suppose.
Yes, probably.
Okay. And there's time to do that in our next meeting prior to the August 31st deadline of that IDC money having to be the grant committed to.
Jeannie, will you make sure that gets put on our next agenda?
Okay. That was the motion.
That was a long one.
I'll second that long motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Item number 11, consideration of possible approval of a request for funding from the Boys and Girls Club. Thanks for being patient with us.
Of course. Very important topics. Thank you for having us. I say us because we're joined by Leanne Saldivar, the president of the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Salt Lake. She's my backup there.
Still here?
She's still here. Of course, my name is Megan Marshall. I'm representing the local Boys and Girls Club. So again, I just wanted to say thank you for having us. I want to make sure I'm checking my notes here. I was here 12 years ago when we started the local club, and the county was absolutely vital in donating monetary funds and in-kind donations to get us up and going. And it's been a wild ride the last 12 years. We've changed locations a few times, but every time we come across another hurdle, we come across on the other side stronger for it. And so last year we had over 300 members, and we've had several members, go on to bigger and greater things as they've graduated. And so it's really great to see older kids now, adults now, coming back and saying what a positive impact the club had on them. And so it's a really, really great feeling. The building that you've donated the use of for the last 2 years has been terrific. We completely understand the need to have sold it just for safety issues. So as you know, we're needing a new home and facing the expenses that come with it. And so we've submitted a proposal stating what is all involved in that, the positive impacts that it's going to have, positive impacts that it's had on me personally. I owe my entire 4-year degree because of the Boys and Girls Club scholarships. Several local kids have also gotten scholarships because of statewide contests, and grades have improved. The feedback from the kids and staff is just amazing. And so this is a program that's vital to our community's youth, and certainly not something that's going away, no matter what the struggle is. So we're pressing on, we're persevering, but we're coming to you today to see if there are any funds that you could help out with in our relocation and having the added expenses of said relocation.
Have you found a place?
Yes, we looked at several different options. We looked at modulars and parking lots. We looked at classrooms. We looked at vacant warehouses. We looked at so many different buildings. But I believe the building that we're in negotiations with right now is there on First North, the old Rocky Mountain Health and Hospice building. So it's a lot bigger than it looks from the outside, and the space is going to work out well. It needs a few customizations for us to make it work for the youth program and the teen program, but we think it's going to serve our purpose as well.
Any other questions?
Did Leanne want to say anything, or can she?
Hi, Leanne. She's on this side of the screen. Can you see her?
Yeah, we
on
can
your
see
side?
her on our screens. Leanne, can you hear us?
Maybe not.
Technology.
So one question maybe that I have would just be, is the Boys and Girls Club here in Price, those donations or things that are brought in for here, do they all stay here, or does it go into a big pot that's used by the ones outside the area?
No, as I've seen time and time again, when the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Salt Lake acquired this club under their umbrella about 3 years ago, if anything, it opened up the door to countless resources. They're funneling more funds and resources down our way.
Okay.
And I can see, Leanne, I can see your mouth moving, but I can't hear you.
She's muted.
Is she muted?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, Leanne, you have a lot more specifics on the funding that gets put between the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Salt Lake and the 6 locations up there and our location. That's what they were referring to, is the funds that would come from local resources, would they stay local?
No, as I've seen time and time again, the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Salt Lake acquired this club under their umbrella.
That's a large lag.
Wow.
Compared to current resources, their funds.
I thought we did too.
Maybe
It's on
Leanne
her
doesn't.
end.
We need to update.
Yeah.
Salt
Can you
Lake.
guys hear me yet?
Yes.
Yes.
We can hear you.
I can see that I'm here, but I'm not. Maybe Steve can help me. Oh, there we are. I can hear myself now.
Between the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Salt Lake and the 6 locations up there and our location. That's what they were referring to, is the funds that would come from local resources, would they stay local?
So you guys can hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
We've got a delay.
Yes.
All right, hang on.
She texted me a little while ago and said, remind me that it's easier to
Can you
drive
hear
down
me?
next time.
Just nod your head.
Yep.
I'm hoping Steve, it looks like Steve Maxwell is with me here. Can they hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
Steve's here now. There's
I
a,
heard the meeting in the background, so I think you might have the meeting pulled up on the computer.
Sorry, Megan, can you hear me yet?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry about this.
Megan, maybe just a question.
Yes.
It looks like
Are you hearing us?
it looks like the request is $27,300. Is that correct?
That's correct. Based on the amounts
Budget.
of the utilities that were paid for the previous building, that's a little less than what you were paying for that.
Right. And it looks like that's probably what you're looking at as far as a building lease and utilities for this new building. That's what that would cover.
Mm-hmm. So then we won't have to pull money from programming and the food budget and the expenses that we incur busing kids to and from the school and to their homes. If we don't have to touch any of those resources, then that's huge. Finding grants to cover things like the lease and utilities are very difficult, as I'm sure you all know. So having that portion of it taken care of would be a huge load off, and we can continue serving as we are. And expanding, getting more kids.
Can you text her and have her stop watching?
Just turn it off.
You should be hearing us now. Can you hear us?
Oh, she's calling me. Maybe that'll work better. Leanne, can you hear me?
She might have us muted.
On the phone she can.
You can hear me? And she hung up.
So I guess the big, not the big question, but just, you know, everybody's had to cut. You've watched in our budget process over the last 2 years, we've cut millions out of the county budget. We've raised taxes. We're still unsure what COVID's going to do to us as far as our projected income. And so a couple of things. This isn't a budgeted item, number one. And in fact, having you in that building as long as we have was not something we anticipated. So utilities and things that we've paid so far this year were in addition to what we had anticipated. So
I see.
What kinds of things have you guys done in cutting or trying to reduce so that you can fit the times we're living in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's definitely been taken into consideration. And as schools are hit, so are after-school programs like ours. And so the clubs up north, the board of directors, they've been working diligently with additional fundraising, additional grant applications. And Leanne is much better equipped to answer this. Leanne, can you hear me now?
I can.
Can that come through the mic?
Turn it up a little bit.
Budget process in the last 2 years.
Have her turn that feed off.
Leanne, can you turn that feed off?
Which one?
Whatever you're watching.
Better?
Much better. And then we're not hearing the past. Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, because I'm getting a real big delay.
All right, now we're live. We were just asking, with all of the budget cuts that are across the board, just due to the unforeseen pandemic, of course, what the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Salt Lake has done to either make cutbacks or increase fundraising efforts, grant efforts. What are we doing to help offset some of these costs?
Oh, awesome question. We've actually had an incredible amount of support from the Department of Workforce Services. They are the ones who have kept the Price Club open all summer with the support that they've given us to pay staff. We did get a payroll protection loan, and we were also able to get some grants from the governor's office for emergency care, and it was not very many kids, but those people who were needing to work, essential workers, this is law enforcement, this is medical personnel, this is firefighters, and we remained staffed all summer long. But the Department of Workforce Services is also helping if we're open. And if we can stay open, they'll give us grants to help support staff. So I mean, I think for me the big picture is that we've increased the budget at this club by a lot. We've increased the staffing, we've increased the number of kids that are able to attend, and we raise money every day for Price. And the money we raise from wherever, from the state, that's not a big chunk. It's private people, and we have a number of very affluent private donors who have roots in Price or in Helper, who are very excited about helping us make sure all of the work of the founders of this club and the work that was done to acquire this club into our organization, you know, it's a $200,000 or $175,000 budget a year. We employ a lot of people, and we take care of the kids of a lot of people who need to be employed in Price, and that's a pretty good thing for your buck. So we have an immediate problem, which is homelessness, and our board of directors is working their tails off. We've found a couple of other supporters who are willing to help us make sure that we can get into this new building. But in order to just get there and get situated, and our stuff is in storage right now, we're paying for storage units, we paid for movers, and that didn't come from Carbon County or Price City. That came from donors that we have to help us, and we're still paying our staff. So we're paying people, and we would like to be back in business by the 1st of September or right after Labor Day, to be back in business helping kids as they enter the school year. But we just need to get some footing. And I think that Carbon County has just been incredible supporters these many years, and that building was a too heavy lift, and I understand why it was a too heavy lift. But we're asking for whatever support you can give right now, or that you think is possible right now. And bless your hearts, this is a public service is hard all the time, but this is a really hard time to be public servants. And so, but we hope we can get on your hit list of priorities, because there are a lot of families and kids who rely on us.
Absolutely.
Do you plan on buying this building or leasing it?
Right now, we're in negotiations to lease, I believe, but looking long-term, if we can gather the down payment, purchasing might be a much better option. We just don't have the down right now. So getting in, because if we can't find a home and stay active, there's a lot of grants that we currently receive that become at risk if we're not open. And if we lose out on those, we lose out on club. We'd have to shut the doors, and nobody wants that.
And then the grants we have are to pay personnel and for the programs that we're offering to kids. Nobody, you can't, there's very few government grants or anything else that will pay for your space costs.
Right.
That's just not real. But I will tell you, my board of directors is meeting next Tuesday, and they are going to think about a purchase or a lease. A purchase is less expensive on a monthly basis, but it does require a down payment, and that's a pretty heavy lift cash-wise for our organization. But they have not ruled that out to mitigate ongoing costs over time. But I do feel like the county has been instrumental in getting this club started, and I have had some folks who said they've been in this game all along, giving either funds or giving a building. Do they not want you? Are you not a big enough priority to continue funding? And they understand, and I understand, that this year and next year, I mean, COVID is a completely different game. We do receive general fund money from other cities that we're located in, other counties that we're located in, and we're in negotiations with all of them because I know this is a really tough time. I think what our board is looking for is, does the county understand the value of what we're providing, and even if it's minimal this year or whatever, is there a commitment on an ongoing basis for the services that we provide? And we all know that this is a tough time. So
yeah, even tougher for the kids.
At a tough time. Yeah.
Yeah, even tougher for the kids whose schedules and routines are completely out of whack. The social distancing from their friends, you know, having this lifeline, which is the Boys and Girls Club, the staff, which means so much to a lot of the kids. Needing this rock is going to be vital for a lot of these kids. And if you meet or talk to any of them, they'll be able to tell you much more passionately than I can. But it's definitely well needed in this area, especially now during these times.
Megan, your $27,300 that's being requested is for building lease and utilities. I assume that's for a 12-month period.
Yes.
Correct. So maybe for 2020, it'd be significantly less than that you'd be looking for as far as your building and utility costs for the rest of this year.
Just the remainder.
We annualize that. Our fiscal year is July, so if we could get in someplace in September for this fiscal year, it may not be, it won't be that much. And those are estimated utility costs from the owner of the building currently that they provided to us. But that's on an annualized basis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, I think being born and raised in this community, we understand the value of community, supporting each other, helping each other. You know, the Boys and Girls Club, we understand that the value there. We appreciate that as well. I was on the board with the United Way. I understand what their purpose was and everything that they did to help support The real issue here is not that we don't care, we aren't concerned, or aren't compassionate, but when you have a $33 million deficit that you have to try to overcome, that's a real challenge. And then you throw COVID on top of it, it makes it even harder. So for us to commit any kind of budgetary dollars that we haven't expected to spend, it's a little bit tough. To commit long-term, it's even harder. So personally, I think it's not that we don't understand what's going on, it's just we're very limited on what we can do. We have a lot of organizations that come and ask us for help, because typically that's what's happened. We'd love to be able to do that, but we just can't. It's just the sad truth of it all. The balancing act is tough, it's very hard. When we have the sheriff's department and we're talking about life, bulletproof vests, and body cameras and things like that, those kind of take a little more priority from other things that are requested from us. So personally, again, it's just trying to figure out what you can do with a dollar. And sometimes you can't do exactly everything you want. You have to just take steps. I would love, like I said earlier, to be able to help everybody and fulfill their requests, but right now with budgets being what they are, it's just impossible to do so. Not saying that we're not willing to help, but if we were able to, it'd be on a very limited basis.
Sure. And even if, as you mentioned, if funds could be allocated to cover the end of the calendar year, that would be a huge impact, just because that's when it's going to be the hardest, getting our footing, getting back moved in. And once we're settled, that gives us a little more time to go out and acquire more funding resources.
Sure.
Well, I agree with Tony. We're certainly sympathetic and wish we could do it all. I think it's probably not realistic to think we could do it all.
Of course.
This is the fourth request today.
I should have been at the top then, is what you're saying.
Y'all got the same answer. So. We've raised taxes in an attempt to try to balance things out, and there's still some unforeseens with how that will shake out, and next year might look a little better. We're hoping it will, but it's a tough thing. So my thought is I think I'm willing to try to pitch a little in and try to help out. I suppose the amount's the big question. And Seth, is something we didn't budget, so we'd have to find somewhere.
I think you looked into what we paid in utilities on the previous building, and I don't remember that figure. It looks as though for 4 months, you're looking at September, October, November, December, correct? You would be about 9,100 of this 27,000 would probably be about what they would be looking for calendar year 2020. So we could look and see if there's that amount of savings having them move out of the old building or not, but just a suggestion.
Meg?
Yes.
And I'm trying, I can hear you guys underwater on my phone. And I recognize that, but I think that the only reason, and we completely understand, every city, every municipality that we're in is in the same boat you are. But we also know that offloading this building is saving a fair amount of change, not only in costs that were going to be the responsibility of the county with regard to upgrading the health and life issues in that building, which was just insurmountable for all of us. But for these last several years, paying the utilities in that building, from what I understand, was about a $20,000 lift every year. So it's been an ongoing cost that the county has borne just to keep that building helpful for us and let us use it. And so it doesn't seem like an additional amount to, and this is what our board of directors is thinking. There has been a contribution from the county thus far in terms of in kind and paying those bills for the building. And if some of that or a little bit of that, and we're not asking, I mean, we presented to you what the request is, but we're not stopping. We're going to keep raising money. Quality Steel has contributed some money already to this effort to make sure we don't disappear. I mean, if we can't get into this building, this club will vanish. And we're not asking for an ongoing year-over-year commitment, but the county has been, and the budget of the county has accounted for the cost of the building we've been in. And so we're just asking for some consideration that a portion of that can help us get into a new building, and we're going to work our tails off to raise money over time to make that sustainable. We're not going to come back year over year. And obviously, if we have a $175,000 or $200,000 a year budget, this portion of it is a lot, and that adds a burden to us. But it's not much more than the county has been contributing over time. And I'm glad that we're all not trying to make the old building, as much as I loved it, workable, but help just, considering what the county was already contributing to the upkeep of the building we were in to help us at least get a footing in the building that we've got in mind, we'd appreciate that consideration.
As well as, that occurred to me, the funds to demolish it was something on the table, that if it couldn't get sold, that was the county's plan, am I correct?
Yeah, but that was unbudgeted money. That was an option, but it wasn't.
Wasn't budgeted either.
No.
So the funds from that no longer need to be allocated toward the demolition, would that be able to apply as well? We might be able to find some there?
Those were funds we were going to have to find anyway.
Ah, gotcha.
Those weren't funds we had sitting in a bank account that said we were.
We'll use this.
That was just, it was conversation. We had to do something. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think what's important, Leanne, and you probably already understand it, but prior to 2018, there were mineral lease monies that allowed for the county to do lots of things without hurting the budget. And that source of funding is actually below what we had to have out of it to do our normal operations. And so we've really gone backwards with our income. And for a lot of years, since 1993, those dollars have been pretty significant, much more than we necessarily had to have annually. So that's where the crunch is, and we're forced to look at every dollar we're spending and make sure that we can make it work. And
sure.
even with our tax increase, we anticipate we'll still be short and have to take money out of savings this current year to meet budget. So we're on the short end, even with our tax increase, and we had a huge tax increase.
Yeah.
So I think maybe we just need a little time to mull this over and try to come up with a dollar amount and where to bring it from, and just get back with you and let you know what we can do.
Yeah, no, we understand completely that annual amount was hefty, and we can't thank you enough for carrying that burden all these years. And so, yeah, if we could get, the 9 that we're talking about just to get us through the next few months, that would be a lifesaver. It would save the club, essentially. It would keep our doors open, and that's our goal. That's our only goal.
Appreciate that. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Leanne, did you have anything else? Any other comments?
No, I can't speak any better than Megan does. She's a club kid at heart, and she says it better than I can.
It's my baby.
Well, thank you
Thank
both.
you.
Appreciate it very much. We will discuss this amongst ourselves and then see what we can come up with.
Christian, once we take a look at budget and what might be left from not paying utilities through the end of the year, do we need to bring it back to a commission meeting?
If you decide on an allocation, I think you should, yes.
Okay.
Probably. I mean, it would be something that's not currently budgeted or anything, right?
Right.
So you probably should bring it back.
Okay.
I love being here. So feel free.
Okay. Sounds good.
Well,
We'll have
thank
to
you.
put that on a future agenda. Okay.
Great. Thank you all for your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you for your time, and thanks for waiting and being patient with us.
Of course.
Yeah, it does have a big delay. I believe we've come to the end of our agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion